Hi, my name's Leah Hechtman, and I'm here with Dr. Joseph Pizzorno and Dr. Michael Murray. How are you both?
Very good.
Great. Great, thanks.
So it's a wonderful time for you both. Your fifth edition of your textbook of natural medicine, has just been released. How do you both feel about it?
Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I feel
achievement.
great. So on the one hand, it's a good reminder that I'm not 30 years old anymore. I think it was, 35 when Mike and I did the first edition. So it's been a bit challenging. But having said that, one of the things that struck me the most is conventional medicine says that every 10 years they think that 50% of what they thought was true is not true. But I go back and look at this. Mike, we've been doing this now since our first edition came out in 85. That, my math is right. That sounds like 35 years ago.
Yes, exactly.
Mike?
And
how much?
Yeah, if anything, we've seen an evolution of some of the concepts that were included in the first edition. Things like the alternate complement pathway, endotoxin, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, the importance of gut permeability, all the special diagnostic tests that we had in there. We've seen a lot of evolution take place, and so we've seen a lot of things grow that we kind of launched in '85.
Yes. So what I've noticed, kind of looking back at 85, some of the chapters there compared to the chapters now, we don't have 10%, 50% being wrong every 10 years. I would say maybe less than 5% over a 35-year period of time. And in most situations, what I found was different now compared to then is we understand the mechanism of action better. It's not like anything was wrong, just like now we better understand how it works. Almost nothing was wrong that we got, because natural medicine is based on the truth of physiology. Physiology doesn't change. What has happened is we now better understand physiology, and unfortunately, we now are showing that foundational concept in naturopathic medicine, get nutrients into people, get toxins out of people, has been validated again and again and again.
Yeah, very well said, Joe. I remember, in the chapter on botanical medicine, talking about how we had this in conventional medicine. They have this idea back in even 85 that they were at the kind of the pinnacle of pharmacological models. And we've learned so much more about mechanisms of action. And I remember stating then that there were a lot of things that in the past were labeled as being ineffective. It turned out that just the pharmacological models were not sensitive to understand the mechanisms of action. We've seen some of the examples that were given really be proven to be effective. So there's been a validation of some of the empirical knowledge, and berberine is a good example of that. I think I even may have mentioned it in there. So we didn't really understand the hypoglycemic effect, anti-hyperglycemic effect of berberine. We knew it had that effect, but since it didn't fit with the existing models, it really was kind of tossed aside, and instead another plant medicine, the biguanide metformin, became the dominant treatment in conventional medicine. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if 20 years from now a derivative of berberine replaces metformin.
Mm. And do you think that that's that sort of naturopathic philosophy of the berberine from, let's say, Berberis vulgaris, for example, as a plant, that because it's modulating the microbiome, that's how we'll sort of piece together the understanding of how it has that effect?
Yeah, the microbiome's going to open up a whole new era of medicine, and I think again it's going to validate a lot of the principles of naturopathic medicine. It's been interesting, not to jump off on tangents, but one of my tangents is the microbiome, because it's what we're seeing is the limited application of probiotics to try and influence the microbiome. And I've written about this as being the reverse germ theory. and I want to help physicians get back to understanding the importance of terrain. And
Yes.
I think this is really the we're going to see a lot come from this pandemic. I think there's going to be a lot of data that I think is going to hopefully wake up conventional medicine to the importance of immune health and what determines our immune health. And we're also going to see, hopefully, what hurts our immune self and our what might be being used in conventional medicine that increases the infectivity of not just SARS-CoV-2, but other microorganisms. And I'm speaking specifically of something like these proton pump inhibitors. I mean, one of the ways in which the body blocks the introduction of pathogens is destruction by hydrochloric acid and pepsin in the gut, in the stomach. And if we're blocking the secretion of hydrochloric acid, if we're raising that pH from 1 to 2 to 3 to 5, we're making it much more hospitable for not just SARS-CoV-2, but a long list of pathogens, and that's why we see these problems with these proton pump inhibitors. So, about 25% of all non-antibiotic pharmaceuticals adversely affect the microbiome. So I think it's going to lead to consideration in the rationale on the use of some of these drugs. And the most detrimental are among the most popular. Proton pump inhibitors, other anti-acid medications, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, and don't get me started on acetaminophen.
Oh, God, terrible.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. 50 million Americans, and this is a worldwide issue, but in the U.S., 50 million Americans every week take Tylenol, take acetaminophen. And this drug, they think it's benign. It's not doing anything other than, relieving pain or maybe reducing a fever. But we know that this simple drug has a serious biochemical effect, and that is reducing our glutathione status. And we know that that's a harbinger of severity of COVID-19, as well as increasing the risk of a long list of conditions that are linked to... Like
Alzheimer's.
Alzheimer's.
Right. As acetaminophen consumption goes up, so does Alzheimer's disease. Why is that? Well, because it depletes glutathione. You need glutathione for detoxification, protect mitochondria from aging. It's all these incredible things glutathione do. So you give people acetaminophen to decrease your glutathione levels. It's dumb.
Yeah. Joe's been doing a lot of work on detox and the effects of these environmental toxins. And I've said for about 20 years now that the greatest threat to human health is not some killer virus, even though we're in the midst of this pandemic. It's this ever-increasing load of environmental toxins, and Joe's done a great job of documenting. And that's one area that I think will only grow in the textbook, is we're going to have a greater appreciation of the effects. And all of those toxins, Joe, as you well know, they severely affect the microbiome. And I just think we're going to grow in our understanding how everything works within the system. And it's really beautiful to see this ever evolving a model and beauty of that model that is naturopathic medicine.
Joe, do you want to talk to the environmental medicine piece perhaps for a bit? Do you want to sort of give us your theories and thoughts around where you think it's influenced naturopathic medicine and where we're heading?
Well, thanks. That's a good question. So obviously, when I was in naturopathic medical school, literally half a century ago, we of course talked about toxicity and detoxification. But most of the time then it was about, well, people are smoking or drinking too much alcohol, or, it's like it was what people were actually doing determined how much toxins got into the body. Of course, there's some environmental, but not a lot. But as our industrialized society progressed, we started releasing more and more of these chemicals and metals into the environment, to the point now where there are over 100 of these at high enough levels in the environment to have documented damage to human physiology and clear indications of disease cause. I think it's fascinating, and because we went from kind of the active determinants of health. Well, do we actually eat healthy food? Do we actually avoid these toxic kinds of things? That determined it. But now it went to passive determinants of health. But what I mean by that is, if you look at, for example, the food supply, the nutrient content of the food supply, like trace mineral, like copper. Well, over this period of time, over the last 40 years, it's dropped like 75%. So the food doesn't have as much nutrients in it. But more importantly, they also now full of these environmental toxins. So even without taking an active or making an active wrong decision, we're now being pummeled with these toxins from the water, from the air, from the food, health and beauty aids, household chemicals and such. So you have this huge increased burden of metals and chemicals in the body. So then you start looking at the status of human health throughout the world, and virtually every chronic disease has increased in every age group. We have the biggest burden of disease ever in human history. And that burden of disease is virtually all traceable to environmental toxins. The best example of that is diabetes. So again, when I was in school, diabetes affected less than 1% of the population. Now it affects 10% of the population, and 1/3 of the population is projected to get diabetes in their lifetime. What happened? Our genetics didn't change. And of course, we're very nutrition oriented. We'll say, well, we're eating a lot more sugar. Well, actually, we're not eating a lot more sugar. We're actually eating a little less sugar than we used to. So there's no correlation between sugar consumption and diabetes. And you say, well, people are obese. Well, obese people have way more diabetes. That's very clear. But most people don't realize is that obese people in the bottom 10% of body load of environmental chemicals and metals don't have increased risk for diabetes. So everybody knows, fat causes diabetes. Excess fat causes diabetes. Nope. What's in the fat that causes the excess diabetes? And there's no poisons in the fat, you're not going to get diabetes. So I've looked at disease after disease after disease, and I've now lectured literally all over the world that environmental toxins have become the primary drivers of disease. So this edition of Textbook of Natural Medicine, which I'm so excited about, because it's 2 volumes, back again at full color for the first time. In virtually every disease, we've now added to those chronic diseases the toxin component. Because when Mike and I first wrote this book 35 years ago, the toxin component wasn't that big a deal. Now it's in every one of the chapters. It's critically important.
What have you noticed, Mike, with the toxin load and how it's impacting diseases?
Yeah, exactly. As Joe is saying, I mean, if you look at in diabetes, is the it's kind of the canary, I guess. But if you
the coal mine, yes.
Yeah, if you look at all the comorbidities associated with diabetes, Alzheimer's disease. That link has not been well established yet, but I think it's an obvious link, because just as Joe was giving the statistics of the rise in diabetes, if we look at the rise in dementia and Alzheimer's disease over the last 40 years, it's an epidemic, and I really think that link will be better established, because there's such a strong link between diabetes and Alzheimer's disease. It's only reasonable to think that it's related to environmental toxins.
Mm-hmm. So how have you found that this edition of the textbook has changed to the previous one, given such a surge in toxicity and influence that way? How do you think readers will find the change in the textbook?
I think it's provocative. I think it's really provocative, but we've got to work on better understanding our modalities in helping our patients get rid of these toxic compounds.
Yeah, I want to add something to this. I think it's pretty important. So as you know, as you're one of our authors for the textbook, again, thank you very much. When I got the updated chapters back from the authors, and by the way, the way we work this is that Mike writes a bunch of the chapters. I think he writes like half the chapters, and my job is to edit everybody's chapters. Okay, so that's how we kind of balance out the work. Anyway, so I was getting all these chapters in from people, and virtually nobody was talking about toxins. Okay, so actually I had to hire and pay for it myself. I don't know if I ever told you this, Mike. I used my advance from Elsevier. I actually hired one of the people who helped me write my book, Clinical Environmental Medicine, to go through every chapter and add the toxic component. And so the reason I'm saying that is not to be denigrating towards the authors of our textbook, which I'm so happy about. Now, obviously, you're one of the people, Leah, who are aware of this, and Michael's aware of it as well. And that is, here we have people who I consider some of the best in our profession writing these chapters, and all this research still hasn't got into the practitioners. So my big hope here is that now that we're showing them in the context of each disease, what are the key toxins, I'm hoping that there can be a lot more detoxification work by clinicians.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you know, Joe, just to kind of highlight some of that work linking toxins to diabetes, it wasn't a single persistent organic pollutant. They really didn't see the link until they looked at 6 combined. And we talk about synergy all the time in natural medicine. Well, there's synergy in the negative effects of these toxins, and the interactions between these toxins is really an area that needs to be better understood. We see some of the epidemiology, but you know, as far as looking at what's going on within the cell and how the cell can protect itself and rid itself of these toxins, that's where I think the real opportunity is in promoting a natural medicine as this knowledge gets better known.
Mike, I'm really glad you brought that up. Sorry, Leah, let me just make a point, because this is really important. And that is one of the reasons why so much of the toxin research was missed, because they're trying to isolate individual toxins. Mm-hmm. They say, well, the toxin level people are typically exposed to, when you look at what that looks like epidemiologically, or what it looks like in the lab, with animals, not that big effect. But the problem is nobody's exposed to just one toxin. They're exposed to multiple toxins which have multiplicative effects. Same thing in nutrition research, and that is to try to look at nutrient deficiencies as just one nutrient. Well, sometimes it is, but remember, one nutrient deficiency is not, you don't see isolated nutritional deficiencies, you see multiple. A good example might be vitamin B6. I say, well, the person's a little low in vitamin B6, but not a big deal. Well, what if they're also low in vitamin B2, which is needed to convert B6 into pyridoxal 5-phosphate, the actual active version of it. So if you have low levels of both of them, now you're not getting the P5P anymore. Okay, but one by itself is not enough. And I found some great research. I just started including my lectures when I was looking at what happens if you're deficient in a nutrient and high in a toxin. Well, it turns out much bigger effects. So looking at homocysteine, if you're low in folic acid, of course your homocysteine goes up. But if you also have lead within the supposed safe range of lead, if you have lead that's a little bit up in that range, you get much more homocysteine. Same thing with B12. If your B12 is low and you got some lead there, way more homocysteine. So a lot of these things it's not just a toxin and it's not just nutritional deficiency. But when you put them both together, now you get all this disease. So I would assert in virtually all diseases, but there's clearly some where it does work. For the vast majority of the diseases, the medical model is a failed model. It works great for infection, works great in surgery, somebody's in an accident, the body's been overwhelmed. If you can do a surgery, get a tumor out, that's great. But for everything else, the drug model doesn't work. It's just not the right way to go.
What do you both see as the right way to go? What do you hope that the 5th edition will help to train clinicians as?
The nutrients in, the toxins out.
Yeah, I think
volume's done.
I don't know if I'll ever get to it, but one of my dreams is writing a textbook on nutrition where we expand the definition of what is a nutrient. If we look at what is a nutrient, it's something that provides a nutritional benefit to our body. And typically, an essential nutrient we define as one that we don't either make at all or we don't make in sufficient levels. Well, if we use that definition, there are many compounds that our body may make to a degree, but we see conditionally essential nutrient needs. For example, omega-3 fatty acids, the long-chain omega-3 fatty acids, or alpha-lipoic acid, or coenzyme Q10, or all these physiological compounds, 5-hydroxytryptophan, carnitine. And so we talk about a lot of these things in the textbook. I also think that flavonoids are a great example, and something that I particularly love. They are an example of a phytochemical that we don't have a true nutritional need for them, but they are certainly critical to our physiology. So there are a lot of phytochemicals that play a huge role in our physiology, as well as in what constitutes a healthy microbiome. And so we're gonna reach the point where food will be the primary medicine. We're just scratching the surface or understanding of the magic of food. We have a tendency to think that we have all this great technology, but the greatest technology in the universe is nothing that man has created. It's nature, and the way we commune with nature on a daily basis beyond water and air is through the food that we eat. And I truly believe the more that we understand in which these compounds in food impact our physiology, we're going to see a revolution take place. And there's so many compounds and ways in which food works in our body that we have not yet fully understood. And we also have the impact that these food components have on the microbiome. Just for example, everyone knows the benefits of dark chocolate on the vascular system. Well, they looked at the flavonols from cacao, and then they looked at metabolites, and they found that there were 9 metabolites that were 10 times more effective in producing beneficial effects on the vasculature than the flavonols from cacao. So again, it's this harmony of the system, and our system includes not only our cells, but this wondrous microbiome component as well.
Old-time naturopathic adage: disease begins in the gut. I was taught that as a student 50 years ago. Disease begins in the gut.
Yeah, that comes from Hippocrates. He said that all disease begins in the gut. He also said all health begins in the gut, and I think he was on to something. And it's great wisdom, right? We now know. It's just amazing. Our physiology, our body, our anatomy is just amazing. We have that that interface in the gut. It's only one cell thick, and we have to have that cell act as a barrier and also a filter, and because that's where we derive our nutrition. There's a lot of focus on our lungs right now with COVID-19. That's another miraculous tissue, and we're not supposed to have an organism actually make it down in there, and we see that it can be catastrophic, and we're learning that the gut it's a secondary route, but I think it's going to turn out to be just like MERS, a primary route for this virus. I think that it's getting in through the gut and then getting into the lungs.
Hey, Mike, going further with what you just said, something you had mentioned to me, I then dove into, and I could talk for a whole hour on what I discovered, but the role of bioflavonoids like quercetin and zinc, and getting zinc into the cells where it can be antiviral. Could you talk about that? I think another example of how food is so important.
Right. There's so many wondrous things about flavonoids and food components in general. We ingest all these pharmacologically active compounds, yet they're not pharmacologically active when they're floating around in the body, and flavonoids are a great example of that. We know that quercetin, curcumin, other polyphenols, they circulate in bound form, either to glucuronic acid or to sulfur, and it's at sites of inflammation. Or the way they proved this, they looked at some cell studies where they induced damage to the mitochondria. And when there's cell damage, when there's inflammation, when there's tumor growth, there's a lot of beta-glucuronidase that's released, and this glucuronidase will break down that bond, and it'll free up that quercetin or other polyphenol and allow it to enter the cell, and that's where magic can really happen. And in cases of inflammation, we see not only some direct effects on the inflammatory cascades, but also some effects on the genes, not only the somatic genes, but also the mitochondrial genes, as it relates to the infection-fighting ability of flavonoids. One of the things that happens during an infection is you get lots of this cellular activity that will release enzymes that will break down that bond between the flavonoid or polyphenol and the glucuronic acid, freeing up the transfer of that flavonoid in a free form. And once it's in a free form, it can act, as Joe mentioned, as a zinc ionophore, thereby allowing ionic zinc to enter the cell. And zinc is an inhibitor of viral replicase. So it's a very beautiful and safe way to exert this beneficial effect of zinc. That's basically how hydroxychloroquine is working. Is working with zinc
ionophore. Yep.
And it's funny because they when some of the studies they've used zinc but most of them have not. They've used hydrochloroquine and azithromycin or one or the other, and said, oh, it doesn't work. Well, if it does work, it's going to work by increasing the ionic delivery of zinc to that cell.
And if there's no zinc there, which is typical of the standard diet, it's not going to work. You look at the studies where it worked. They use it with the zinc and the azithromycin, but the studies that were negative, they use it by itself. It's just like they were designed so that a cheap drug could not be shown to be effective, so that the expensive antiviral drug is the one that would be prescribed. Sorry, excuse my cynicism here.
Yeah. Very good. Very well said.
So I want to. So before we go further, Leah, is that the Blue Mountains in the background?
Yes.
Oh, it's so gorgeous. I remember my motorcycle trip there. It was such a beautiful ride.
It's a lovely part of the world. Look, I mean, so time and time again, there are so many different examples where everything that's been traditional naturopathic philosophy and traditional naturopathic understanding is proving to just be enduring. So if you look at the new textbook and you look at the new edition of it, what do you think changed so much other than the toxins, and what can clinicians hope to gain from the textbook? Is it that we've finally got more research to prove that some of our old methods have more validation? Is it that there are new discoveries with new compounds that they've been able to create? What do you think has been the biggest change there other than just the toxins?
Well said. So I'll answer the mic out to it. Okay. Yeah, so first off, there's 30 more chapters. Okay. So it's a 2-volume set for a good reason. One is 30 more chapters. 2 is all this updated research. I mean, more and more research is validating what we do. And of course, I said before, we put in the all the toxin research as well. So it is, I think it's by a sizable margin our biggest update ever. Just more chapters, more content, all of it. Quite different.
And what are some of the new chapters? Sorry, Mike. What are some of the topics that you've added?
Oh, I forget. I'm sorry. Remember, by the time I get done with my editing, it gets through a whole publication process. It's been over a year since I've looked at it, so I don't remember. Do you remember what some of the new chapters, Mike? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, a lot of them were just, we took chapters, we expanded certain topics that we had in other places into more dedicated chapters. We have new diagnostic chapters. We have new chapters in the pharmacology. For example, pyroquinoline quinone, or PQQ. This is emerging. We had
hey, I know one, a good one. Sarcopenia, brand new chapter, big chapter, written by Dave Barry, who used to be the dean of one of your naturopathic medical schools there. I think he was in Melbourne. I'm not sure. So there's chapters like, and actually it's a good example. Sarcopenia. You didn't see sarcopenia 50 years ago. Now it's a major problem in the older population. And actually, I'll do a little anecdote. So as you can see, I got plenty of gray hair now because I've been around for a while. Leah, and Mike, I don't know if you're having this experience as well, but all my family and friends in my age group, they're all dying, or they have some major disease, or they're just done with life. And I'm still out there motorcycling in Australia, New Zealand, and just living life fully. It's sad to see.
Very sad.
I've become more radical. As I gotten older, I've become more radical. When I was a student 50 years ago, I kind of had to take this all in faith because it made sense, but the research wasn't really there. Mm-hmm. Well, now, half a century later, the research is there. Not only is the research there, but my own personal experience is showing that those who take care of themselves do way better than those who don't take care of themselves.
Would you agree, Mike?
Yeah, I think, again, because this pandemic is on everybody's mind, I think that this is an opportunity, I think, for the naturopathic profession to really step up and have a bigger voice, because if we look at what's happening here in the United States, there's a reason why we're getting hit harder than any other place, because we have this high rate of obesity and other comorbidities. And all of these comorbidities, diabetes, high blood pressure, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or chronic asthma, they're all associated with low immune function, and as well as other nutritional and physiological derangements that I think really would respond well to naturopathic medicine. Of course, the best medicine is always the one that focuses on the underlying cause, and that's what I'm really most proud of in the textbook, is that I think we've always done a really good job, and the contributors have always done a really good job at kind of discussing what are the key underlying factors that are really causing these diseases. And when I was learning about high blood pressure in the 1980s, the term was essential hypertension, because the medical profession said, essentially, we don't know what causes it. And that was ridiculous, because of course we knew what caused it. We know what causes it today. And, I think, again, these are the conditions that I think lend themselves to being treated by natural measures. And again, there's a strong environmental factor in these diseases that are associated with COVID-19 as well.
I'm going to give you two parts to this question, so please bear with me. But given that essentially your textbook is the foundational textbook for all modern naturopaths internationally, given that it's the Bible, you ask any naturopath, they know your names, they know your books, they're going to hopefully go out soon and purchase the 5th edition. Where do you see it all going? Where do you see it progressing? What do you hope that the 5th edition will give your clinicians, knowing that it's probable that the 6th edition will be out within the next decade? What do you hope to see before you get to the 6th edition? And how do you hope that it will influence things? I mean, your 4th edition completely revolutionized so many different conditions and the approaches to how they're treated. What do you hope to see from this one?
Well, I'm going to make a comment and then turn that over to Joe, because Joe's said some things to me in private that have really touched me. But one of the things that I want people to know about this textbook is the birth of the textbook was in response to a change of circumstance for me. I was working in a lab, putting myself through naturopathic medical school, and I was a serum separator, and of course they developed a machine that would take the place of humans for that role, and I lost my job. And I really needed to find a new job. But, I started asking myself really good questions like, what do I really want to be doing? And what is a gift that I have that I could use to my advantage? And I was really blessed to have a great fourth grade teacher, and she taught me a valuable skill. And what she taught me was to take in information and write a report in my own words. And at the front of the classroom, she had a poster with all of our names, and she told us if we wrote a book report, she'd give us a gold star. Well, I wrote so many book reports that she had to create another poster just for me. And so I fell in love with a certain type of writing. It's not creative writing in a way, but it's a way of ingesting and putting it out in a way that is a little different and maybe makes more sense and people can understand it more. So I knew I really, and I was, writing in school and getting good feedback on that. And I thought that there was a real need for a textbook, something that would, at the time there was no definitive textbook on naturopathic medicine. So I went to Joe and I said, Joe, there really needs to be a textbook of naturopathic medicine. He goes, oh, I agree. There really needs to be one. I said, and I think you and I should write it. And he laughed, and then he looked at me, and I'll never forget his look, because when Joe's thinking, you can see it sometimes. And he stopped and he said, that's a really good idea. Let's do it. And I said, and I think the school should pay me $400 a month to write it. And he laughed again, and he said, I think we can do that. And I said, and I need a computer, Joe. And he says, oh, Mike, I can't help you with that. You're going to have to come over on the weekends and use mine. So I started writing this textbook by hand. And then, which is just insane, but because it's such a big work right now. But I look at that set of circumstances, and it could have gone any of a number of ways. One, I could have never had the idea or asked the right empowering question. Two, I could have said, well, who am I? I'm just a student. I'm just a third-year student at Bastyr. Am I really qualified? And I could have had doubts, and I could have said, it's not appropriate for me to even approach Joe. But I was always influenced by things that I've read. And one of the most powerful quotes is, for me, was a quote from Goethe on the power of commitment and purpose. And, to be bold, that genius has, that boldness has genius in it. So I was bold, and, as a result of that initial thought, it just rolled into something that I think has made a really big impact, not only in our profession, but it's touched a lot of people.
Millions and millions of people.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. That was quite eloquent. Let me talk a bit about that a bit from my side. So this is back in 1983 when Mike came to me to do this. And at that time, Bastyr was struggling. We just had our first graduation. We're struggling to stay alive, but more importantly, we were struggling to reestablish naturopathic medicine in the United States, because at that point, only 6 states licensed us, and we were a felony in 2 states. I mean, you go to prison for practicing naturopathic medicine in 2 states, and illegal everywhere else. And as I was trying to get more licensing, I kept running across the same problem. That is, the medical apologists would say, well, you're not scientific, so why should we believe you? And the problem is they had a valid point in that at that point in the U.S., I know there's more books in Australia, which actually I ended up using in my classes, but at that point, the most current textbook in naturopathic medicine had been written in the year I was born. Okay, so there was just nothing there. I said, I'm not going to break through this licensing problem until we can show the science. And I know there's science because before I started Bastyr, I would spend basically 2 days a week in the library going through journals. And I find all this incredible stuff, like, for example, golden seal. I was thinking about it now. I want to detox. I know you got to get rid of the bad bacteria, but I don't want to hurt the good bacteria. I found this great study looking at berberine in a journal called Alkaloids, and it said berberine doesn't kill lactobacilli. I thought, wow, that's really interesting. Oh, thank you, dearest. So I knew there was science there by going from all those articles I read to something we could present to legislators. Couldn't do that. So when Mike came to me, it was the right time, because I knew to go the next step, we've got to deal with that issue of science. So by doing that, my initial intent was to show the scientific base for naturopathic medicine so we get licensed. Little did I realize how big an impact it would have. Few people realize that we have now sold about 100,000 copies of the textbook of natural medicine in all the editions. Now, when you think about that, there aren't that many naturopathic doctors in the U.S. for sure. I know there are more in Australia, but the reality is that far over half were purchased by medical doctors. And so many medical doctors told me it gave them back the joy they had in medicine that got beat out of them in medical school. And when they're out there in practice giving drugs to people and watching what happens, realize that wasn't why they got into medicine. So you look at the growth of integrative medicine, look at the growth of functional medicine. So many of those people they read our textbook. And reading our textbook, they realized that their instinct that there's something wasn't right in conventional medicine, also we just validated it. And it provided a really strong foundation for a fundamental revolution in medicine. And so now in the US, 23 states now license us. I mean, look at that. We went from 6 states licensed and a felony in 2 states to now 23 states licensing us. And if you look at integrative medicine, you look at functional medicine, et cetera, look at the people doing the education, look at the people in leadership, they're naturopathic doctors. So what Mike's idea was transformational in medicine, and I'm really honored and humbled to have had the opportunity to work with Mike to create this landmark textbook.
I think back to when I was studying 25 years ago, and there was one copy left, because I think it was your second edition or something like that. There was one copy left and there were pages missing, and people would sneak into the library to try and look at it because no one had a copy. And I mean, it's phenomenal, because it was such a, it was the bee's knees. It was everything that you wanted to have access to. And with every year that passes and every edition that passes, it's phenomenal to watch how it consistently leads the way and it consistently evolves where everything's heading, where we've come from. It gives us our foundation, but it keeps pushing the limit. And I know that the 5th edition will do that again. And I think it's interesting to see, well, all this information about toxicity and environmental impact, where is it going to head and how is it going to transform things? And will it actually empower political change, and will it empower environmental change on a global scale? And it probably will. And that's pretty phenomenal that you guys are doing that. So, it's brilliant. And I'm so grateful that you do it.
So, Leah, you asked a while ago, what has changed, what have we added, and just to give people some specifics, we added a chapter on anxiety, autism, chronic renal failure. We had
conditions that didn't exist when we wrote the first edition.
Yeah,
it's just stunning.
Dysfunction, viral gastroenteritis, gastroesophageal reflux disease. We didn't have that. We had that indigestion. We pulled out hyperlipidemia. We expanded the insomnia chapter to touch on other sleep disorders. We added a chapter on mild cognitive impairment, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, lupus. We added vulvodynia to the vaginitis and vulvovaginitis chapter. So there's a lot of it's expanded. We in the pharmacology section we cut out some things that kind of had fallen out of the marketplace and replaced them with things that have kind of emerged. Joe, I remember in the first edition we had a chapter on phage therapy, and that was such. I just love that we had that in there, and I don't know if you saw the Newsweek article. It was a cover article last year. I'll send it to you, but it talked about the new discovery of an ancient or a long-term therapy, and phage therapy is something that I think is going to emerge as a primary therapy. We just have to learn more about it and how to expand it. But it was part of the first edition.
It is really stunning. we were decades ahead of everybody else.
Decades. And if you
when we talk about we don't know what the impact is with some of these thoughts, because if we look at cardiovascular disease and the role that C-reactive protein and inflammation plays. The first place that I remember seeing that is in really detailed was in the textbook of natural medicine. So you don't know who read that and led to them looking at this more seriously.
Mm. I remember
that's the hope. That's the hope, is that when I graduated, I remember being interviewed by a local reporter, and he asked me what I thought the future was of naturopathic medicine. And I said I thought it was going to be very bright, but I said, sometimes a stone can hit the surface of a still pond and cause a far-reaching ripple. And there's always the possibility that what we're doing in this profession is going to produce a ripple that's far greater than our profession itself. And I hope that's true, because that means that a lot of these truths will become self-evident. And conventional wisdom isn't based upon truth, it's based upon convenience, and we have to replace a lot of the conventional wisdom out there with truth. And I think I do believe that science is the path, and I'll give my tip of my hat to Joe Pizzorno to driving that home to me in our first class in naturopathic philosophy at Bastyr.
Beautiful full circle. So if anyone is listening to this in the research community, is there any areas of research that you'd like to evolve from the 5th edition?
Hey, Mike, to answer that, I'm changing my audio a bit.
Okay. Joe mentioned it. We talked, and I mentioned it as well. We need to do a better job at toxicology, and also let me throw something else into the mix here. Joe and I worked on a book on cancer, how to prevent and treat cancer with natural medicine, and doing research on that book, I came across an article where they looked at explanatory style and its ability to predict a person's ability to get rid of cancer-causing compounds. So what they found was that people that were more optimistic, they were better able to get rid of these cancer-causing compounds. And so in the summary of the article, the researchers said, we have now found a new field of study. At the time, if you look at the history, it went from psychoneuroimmunology to endoimmunology, and then it went to, so these researchers said they have a new field of study. It's psychoneuroendoimmunotoxicology. And it's just ridiculous because everything's connected. And so we have to see researchers look at the effects of multiple factors, not just one primary factor. And so when we look at and we're gaining in our ability to do that, but we have to look at nutritional status. We have to look at the level of toxins. We have to look at the microbiome. We have to look at genetics, SNPs, and it's just getting more and more complex. But that's what will lead to individualized medicine. And we have this system of medicine that's based upon double-blind studies. And if you look at double-blind studies, you see that there's always these outliers, hyper-responders or non-responders. And we're missing a lot of people because we're not tailoring the treatment to them. And we're trying to treat a mass of people and hit a high percentage, but we're missing the mark on a lot of people, even with our natural therapies. So I just would encourage researchers to keep doing what they're doing, but expand their perspective on how things work within our system.
Fantastic.
First off, can you hear me okay now? I just changed my audio.
It's all fine.
We're okay?
Yep.
Okay, so I want to add to what Michael said. First off, the personalization piece I think is critical. I think that's a good example where conventional medicine got off track, because conventional medicine decided that statistical medicine is the way to go, and it decided on generic human beings rather than individual human beings. And when you're looking at interventions to, for example, kill a microbe, that works great. When we look at the health problems people have, pretending people are not unique individuals results in all kinds of problems. Now, I'll bring an example here in our own world. Let's look at people who are suffering from migraine headaches. Okay, statistically, when you give them Butterbur, they will decrease the frequency of migraine attacks. But statistically, about 1/3 of people, if they're taking the Butterbur properly, they pretty much will stop having migraine attacks. The other 2/3 won't have any benefit whatsoever, because people have migraine headaches for a wide range of reasons, some of which are matched well with the potassiums that are in Butterbur, but the others, there's no correlation with that, so it's not going to work. So it's the personalization piece is critical, and it will help. It'll also help conventional medicine work better too. But right now, the statistical medicine that conventional medicine is doing is missing a lot. But there's a bigger issue, and when we talk about the research I want to see, I want to see research on systems of healing. So as a naturopathic doctor, we treat each individual uniquely. So rather than saying, well, how does St. John's work compared to Prozac, for example, in the treatment of depression? It has no interest for me whatsoever, because it's not going after the reason why people are sick. It's just treating symptomatically. Yeah, herb is probably better than a synthetic chemical, but still a wrong philosophy. So we need to look at systems of healing. So look at what is the longevity? What's the disease burden? What's the healthcare cost of people who choose to go to naturopathic doctors and live a naturopathic lifestyle? What do they look like after 100 years versus those who are living the standard lifestyle? And I'll tell you right now, the differences are dramatic, because people living the standard lifestyle are dying fast. They're susceptible to pandemics like SARS-CoV-2. Whereas those who are healthy, it's the subtle things like, okay, so how come I haven't gotten this infection? Could it be because I eat real foods? I have a lot of zinc in my system, and I take a lot of bioflavonoids. And the food I eat, as well as supplements I take, zinc into my cells that will then knock out the virus. It's like there's all these subtle effects from living the naturopathic way that dramatically change not just people's individual health, but the health of themselves and the health of the people they interact with. Kind of a joke that Laura and I have is, boy, when people start becoming our friends and interacting with us, they get healthier, okay? Because they're starting to see, yes, there is a different way of doing things. There's a healthier way of doing things. We need to study that over a period of time. And I think we'll find just the whole healthcare crisis we're experiencing right now, we're experiencing a healthcare crisis because we have the wrong model spending all the money. Let's put the money into the right model.
Well said. Well, absolutely could talk to you both for ages, but I'm conscious that you've generously given this time. I'm pretty certain that the 5th edition is going to do wonderful things for the profession, but for health at large, and what a time to release it, because I think we need this sort of information at a time like this, and we need to improve the general population's awareness of health. So what a privilege, and thank you both very, very much for your time and your contributions.
One more thing to add. This edition is absolutely beautiful. It's the first one in color. We've got great illustrations. It is just visually very appealing, and it brought a tear to my eye when I opened it up and saw it. It's just we've come a long way from that loose leaf binder of the first edition. So thank you for the opportunity to talk about it.
Yeah, a very long way. I can't wait to get my copy, but I'll make sure that we put notes and links and things for people to be able to access it. And I'm sure, we'll hear lots of rumblings in the communities at large. So thank you both very, very much.
Thank you.
Just simple things that's really fun. There are a bunch of really nice ones, but just things like when we talk about the herbal medicine, now do we not only have these structures, but we're also able to say, this is what it looks like. Anyway, it's just so much fun. Beautiful. I was so delighted when we got that full color.
Beautiful. Well, I'm looking forward to receiving my copy. So thank you very, very much. Thank you.